Good afternoon to all of you. I welcome you back to this session, the concluding session of the two-day seminar. And as you might have already seen, this session is basically a brainstorming, to think of where do we go from here, where do we go, the road ahead. We have had science communication in this country for maybe several decades, and if at the end of this we still have the kinds of discussions which you have heard in the last 2 days, it says we haven't come much far. We are more or less probably where we are where we were. There is not much of a progress or much of an understanding of the requirements. Then of course, on the other hand, I must say that the sessions brought out very clearly the requirements of different segments of the people. Who is expecting what? That's very clear. Whether they get it or not, that's not very clear. In fact, it's more likely they are not getting what they want. And of course, there are reasons why they are not getting what they want, but we are not interested in the reasons. We are trying to find out how to get over that problem. We have with us today Dr. Vijayaraghavan, and we all know him as the builder of the Biotechnology Bioscience Institute in Bangalore, NCBS, the TIFR Center. Some of you might also know him as Secretary, Department of Biotechnology, and also of Department of Science and Technology. But he is here today not as Secretary Biotechnology, not as Secretary DST, but as a blogger. In other words, he is one of the early birds who have jumped into the new social media to effectively make use of it for his own professional advancement. That's something which we heard in the morning, what are the opportunities which it gives. And I was telling Pallav, after hearing that presenter, in fact even I was getting tempted why I am not getting into it, which effectively reveals that I have not got into it so far. Right? So, but I think as times change, the tools in our hands are definitely different. The problems may be the same, the tools are different. And how to make effective use of this is the challenge to all of us. And there at least there is no difference of opinion. So I am going to now hand over to Vijayaraghavan to listen to you, to share what he sees in this new media and what his perception is of science communication in general, because that's also part of his professional mandate today. And at the end of the day, if he has something, hey, Niyaz should do this, we are willing to do it. If he says all of you should do this, we should be willing to hear him, and he will also tell you how to go about in a way, including the money for that. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Vijayaraghavan.
The last part actually is very easy, especially since there's no money in the bank. But that'll change, yeah. I think what I'll do is I will literally in about 2 minutes or 3 minutes summarize what I think the threads which we have been contending with, and perhaps what you have discussed. I've heard from Pallav how extraordinarily intense the discussions have been the last few days. But before that, I'd like to thank Pallav and Dr. Ramurthy for having me here. It's really fantastic to see this group over here, and with much humility that I approach the task which he's given me, because clearly all of you have discussed everything thoroughly. So I'll just give a very brief overview of what I think the contentious issues are, starting from the way science evolved in modern India, but then leave the floor open for inputs about what the solutions are for, which says, a roadmap for science communication. And then we can come back and I'll try to summarize what I think the actual solutions are, which of course will have signing of checks, but also also have structures for which these signing of checks would be very valuable. So one of the problems I've been having with science in India, in trying to understand how one can communicate as well as do science in India, is the following. It's about the rootedness of science in our daily lives. if you go to a Bengali house or a Maharashtrian house or a Tamil house, music and language and theatre across economic strata are rooted in some way or the other, right? And this is true correspondingly in Europe also. Europe has an additional feature that in some ways behind people's brains there is a rootedness in what science means over a cultural period of a rather substantial time. I find it interesting, and I may be wrong, and there are eminent people here who will correct me, that in some ways, with the start of science as we call it today, with J.C. Bose perhaps as the icon of that, we have a situation where science is seen as an excellence which has to be matched with what is going on in centers of excellence far removed from us physically and disconnected from us culturally. Many scientists have excelled at this science, they've imbibed what this excellence means, and they've done really well. The laws of physics and chemistry are fortunately universal, and therefore, this spreads into our teaching. The results of science and technology get jobs, and that's then, very valuable. But the result of this kind of a view of science is there's a conflation of science and technology in our community. And this seamless interchange of one with the other is actually the source of many of our problems. Science, i.e. technology, in many people's minds, is seen as a source of employment and as a solution to problems. There is no deep cultural embedding of science in a manner there is to music. Right? There is that component of science which we oftentimes, perhaps I may be wrong, again, we miss. There are newer conflations which arise due to the problems, and these are problems not because of technology, but because of the applications of technology related to growth, and this is a global issue, right? Is deep sea oil drilling right or not? Is large-scale fishing correct or not? I mean, there are obvious benefits, there are obvious problems, and all of this in our context is viewed as the consequences of science, not as the consequences of economies or market or technology, but this is what science is. And this is sort of a quasi-Nehruvian view that the Bhakra Dam is an example of science, right? And of course it is, it obeys the laws of physics, but it's more than just that. So that conflation is the other problem. In our cultural views, science is equated with technology. There's a third conflation, and this is people like us and people who are not in this room and who can never be in this room. When we indulge in debates about science and technology, we have the luxury of going on endlessly with every one of us having a veto, and decision makers particularly being extraordinarily careful to cover their butts, because a decision they take could backfire, quote unquote, on them many years later, and therefore let's not take a decision. I've heard thousands of views. This one is strident on this issue, that one is strident on another issue, this one is backed by money on one, that one is not. Delay and postponing decisions are actually comfortable because it doesn't matter to us in this room. It doesn't affect us at all, it doesn't affect our kids, it doesn't affect, where we make our money and our future, nothing. If you postpone by 100 years the introduction of a vaccine, you are still legally allowed, if you have money in your pockets, to vaccinate your children. It doesn't affect you, and all of you have money in your pockets to do that. And that is the principal tragedy when we discuss communication. We can go on, who are we communicating to, and what are the consequences of our communication? Should it not be feedback to decision makers to look at the intersection of ideology, society, sociology, and science and take decisions, and correct those decisions because of feedback, and then take new decisions and correct it. It's a challenging, complex problem. It's not a happy problem to solve. You will always be criticized no matter what you do, but at the end of it, you have to take this decision. If India's name were Liechtenstein, we could go on endlessly. This is the entire population of Liechtenstein over here. We could debate on every topic endlessly, have a great time, go to our hillsides and dig into our bank accounts and relax. But we have apparently a huge demographic dividend, it's called, and time is running out. So everything we do has consequences, and doing nothing is actually one of the major consequences which will be there. The final aspect of this kind of lack of decision making is that much of these debates are driven by what happens all over in the West. There are huge demands on should India open up for this or that market or the other? Should we actually have this kind of agreement with WTO? Should we manufacture this or not, or import it? And these kinds of issues. So a country this size now has now got another problem. This lack of decision making means a lack of change from within, a lack of science for public good, a lack of engagement of science and manufacturing in the public sphere, and therefore you're driven entirely by exactly those kinds of fears which much of the debates rake up. They will start dominating because of lack of decision making. And this is a fundamental problem which we need to grapple with. So we need to live outside this room a little bit, because this society outside this room has subsidized us enormously, allowing us to have this debate. So that's a key aspect of communication. Communication for whom, and what are the consequences of the communication. Now, again, there's another aspect of communication which I see from within government. And what is extraordinary going into government is the phenomenal competence actually at every level in every unit. Governments all over the world, and the Indian government in particular, is no different, but special in some cases, again for the consequences I mentioned, that the whole is extraordinarily less than the sum of the parts. And this is amazing. You have extraordinary competence in the health ministry, at the DBT, at the DST, in the pharma ministry, in energy, in urban development, in rural development. You talk to people, they know what should be done, they know the roadblocks. What is missing? And that's very, very simple. What is missing is two components. One is a shared purpose. The purpose, instead of the goal of our ministries being the purpose, i.e., again, acting on those who elect you directly or indirectly, those outside this room, instead of that being the goal is to ensure that this green wad of paper, which is tied by a thread, is consistent and correct internally. This is a surreal world which every department in the government lives in. Is the paperwork correct? And just as it's crude and silly for scientists to chase surrogate markers of success, awards and so on and so forth, and where you publish, right? Science is not about that. Similarly, government is not about ensuring that the file is correct. File being correct is a consequence of decision making, not the purpose of decision making. So unless one has a shared purpose, then the file moving, there are all sorts of fantastic committees for intergovernmental, interministerial coordination and so on, and they all exist. But there has to be somehow, when we talk about communication, we must connect this with an accountability for the purpose being executed. So that's the other aspect. So communication is therefore critical, not just for conveying the conflations between science and technology and science and society, what wonderful things are happening, how they can or cannot, or what the doubts are about transforming one's lives or understanding the origins of the world. All this is critical and important, but it is really about feedback and responsibility in a larger context. And unless that is there, we are failing in our primary goal as communication. So communication also is about exploring science in aspects about the future of the planet, our future of our societies, and therefore we should therefore see what are the structures which can actually transform that challenge. Now, one last point, how actually all these are problems. You would have stated the problems over the last few days much better than I have. What are the solutions? Now, the solutions, the wonderful aspect, I was here for a bit of the previous session, is that there are solutions which can actually be catalytic. You see wonderful people here who have done extraordinary work in developing science and science communication. Can we combine that with the tools available to make sure that we catalyze the communication to a larger level, translate it into multiple kinds of contexts where they can be seen and understood, and importantly, challenge authority, because unless authority is questioned by this communication setup constantly, and by questioning I don't mean it at a shriek level where one says that authority is all completely wrong and doesn't serve a purpose and so on and so forth. But this is an interaction where questioning authority at every level, in every context, is really the key for success in science communication. And that's where this so-called quote-unquote antagonistic view of the press is really vital for us to integrate and analyze. So I'll leave the floor open for views, but since Dr. Srikumar Banerjee has to leave shortly, may I request him for his comments first, and then others can pass on.
I have got chance of talking in this forum quite a bit. So first point I'll mention that I'm not going to say even a word on nuclear. So we had a fairly long discussion on the basic issue, which is not really the agenda of this meeting, that is growth versus conservation. Conservation of resources, conservation of cultural plurality, conservation of biodiversity. And this is one thing which actually took quite a bit of time of ours, because this is a very important debate. But I don't think in matter of these 2 days discussion, we can come to a solution to this kind of a debate. The second part, which has not been so much covered, is perhaps not many people have touched upon the point how to convey the excitement of science to the people. Because to an extent, I think we went only to the areas which are of nature, where there is a kind of a hide and seek game, and in that more on the GM crop or on nuclear energy, and these kind of things came up. But there is something which is extremely important, that's about the communicating the excitement of science, which is actually will sort of trigger that excitement amongst the young people. That's a very important aspect of it. And finally, I come to the point which I wanted to mention. Actually, in the morning, Dr. Balasubramanian mentioned about the science is complex. See, you mentioned about the J.C. Bose. J.C. Bose, just like today when Arvind did the demonstration, J.C. Bose did all his presentation in Europe with demonstration. He demonstrated that communication between one room to the other, and that is the first time anywhere in the world he could show that there is a possibility of wireless communication. So the discoverer of wireless communication is J.C. Bose, and that is now completely accepted in the international community. So in fact, Arvind's thing was more or less like that, I would say. But then point is, scientists are generally very vocal. Scientists always want to publicize their work. Here, from the media people, we got the impression that they don't want to. Of course, you have talked more about perhaps the government scientists, that is, scientists paid by the government. They may have some reasons for not to openly say everything. But one has to take care of a few issues in this. Because today, see, if you really talk of Higgs boson and to make it a popular, it's rather difficult. It's definitely difficult. It's more difficult than J.C. Bose's showing how a wireless message can be sent from one room to the other, or some of the experiment which Arvind showed. You can't make Higgs boson that simple. That's no doubt that is there. But the question is that with some of the modern tools, which also we got a good chance to see, because audiovisuals and even 3D kind of picture is not impossible to bring to your front. And it is not impossible to make some of the things which are rather complex concept to bring out in form, which may be making it interesting to even children in the school. And that sort of an approach need also to be taken using some of the modern tools in conveying some very complex topics of science in a manner which excites people. But the fundamental question we have to ask, actually, aren't much of exciting science not being done in the country? So this is a fundamental point. And because what is exciting for our society and what is exciting for let us take a developed country society, are not necessarily the same. And they're not the same, then there's a problem comes that, okay, you do something. Of course, today you find that anything related to communication, particularly with the cell phone being there in everybody's pocket, is becoming important. So it gets publicized very quickly, but it is not so for some of the scientific things which are, and scientists are sometimes, before they write up the paper, they don't want to really make it a newspaper item. That's one point which is there. Because if they do it, there's a problem. There's a problem for him to publish that in a recognized journal, and scientists believe that it has to be properly peer-reviewed. Now, here, one good point we heard, and that's very interesting, that many people have mentioned that as a journalist, when they take something, they don't accept it as is. They get it checked by some other scientist. So a process of peer review, though not as elaborate as in a normal scientific journal. But this trend is very, very much welcome, and it's very important that scientific discoveries, even if it is reported or somebody says, claims, it must be verified by an expert person or sometimes an expert body. So that's very nicely happening. Now the importance, the other point came up, I just wanted to make my things very short, that is about the profession of science communication. Is it worth having, it's already there in Anna University, a course on science communication. Now the problem is that these people who are getting the degree in science communication are not finding suitable opportunities. And that is because there is no cadre. Here there is a divided opinion. I remember there has been discussion earlier on this point. If you really make a cadre, whether it's in DST or any other government department, that is science communicators, their career profile, how that would be, how that would shape up, is under doubt. Because he will be assessed in the same bench scaling of a scientist, and there you will find that he will not match up with the expectation that is required from. So what will be the role of science communicator? But I have also noticed one thing, that a person who's taking one of the, I would say, science profession, and particularly in government, they have also a 35 to 40 years of career. So many are not really there for 40 years of research. So they can change over at a certain stage. So I would say the institute like NIAS can actually do immense work on this to make some of the scientists and have some kind of a short-term courses and make them a good science communicator. And even the science communication job need not be a permanent job. It could be either a side job, it could be for a certain period, and then again he can come back to science. There are some options that one has to see so that you get good people in science communication. And you need really very good people. It is not just mediocrity you push to science communication. That will be a death of the science communication fraternity. We need the very good people to come to science communication. But then you have to also see that they don't lose the scientist profile. So these two things are contradictory, and this one has to ensure that one remains in profession, at the same time becomes a good science communicator who can explain things, more complex things, in a rather simple way. So this is what I wanted to mainly say before I leave. But I must also thank Pallav Bagla, Dr. Ramamurthy, and in this debate, some of the things which I heard, mainly from Shiv Vishwanathan, Praveer, Rajendra Singh is not there now, Arvind, and finally, of course, from Sandhya Shekhar, that the opportunity that social media can give to a scientist. But to tell you frankly, Sandhya, I find that it's so difficult even to manage email, because you get 80% of my email I just can't open. So this is my problem. So should I enter into another area like your social media to expose myself to that kind of a pressure? So 80% is an underestimate. It's more than that. So how do we manage that? I don't know. We can call it spam. In fact, that branding spam is also dangerous, because a very important paper to me are branded spam. So that's why I find that I'm really scared of social media, to tell you very frankly. But the way you showed, it shows a possibility that social media can be very, very effectively utilized in these. And I'm sure that the modern tools in many ways will help in the science communication business. But all said and done, in our country, print media, or even I would say science exhibition like what Arvind did, was an excellent way. But Arvind gave more examples from what you have been doing in Africa. But the same way you have also said 1,500 schools in the country also have got benefit of your.
So personally, I've visited 3,000 schools in my country. But a lot of schools get benefited. I can't reach to every school, but the website is a very good medium for them.
Okay. I mean, so it's a very, very pleasant and extremely informative. In fact, it was much beyond, much more than what I expected when Pallav invited me for this meeting. It was excellent being here. Thank you all.
Thank you, Shripal. So I think there have been several topics raised just now, but also, over the last couple of days, so it'll be good if we actually focus on concluding about what to do as distinct from stating the problem. Because I think that will be really nice to conclude this by saying, look, these are the kinds of programs or structures we'd like to get going right away. So from that, your views on that, yeah. Anuj.
I'll try to take your cue. One, I would like to think on capacity building. And we do have 4 universities which are running courses on science communication still. And they are doing a lousy job, despite the grants that go from the DST. And therefore, we need to look at everything that is happening as far as these universities are concerned. Anna University, Indore, Jaunpur, and Lucknow.
Having given your view about them, maybe you shouldn't name them.
Right. And we therefore need to look at it and how to really get our act right. And also we should open up opportunities for mid-career journalists, those who are already practicing and perhaps are in the field of development communication or science communication, where they can enter. The other is about creating a resource. And I think that's important because a lot of journalists, including those who presented their papers here, talked about the difficulty of being able to access the best information which is authentic and which is available to them, from which they can. So we need to have a mechanism by which we are able to create that resource, whether it's in the government, whether it's in the autonomous sector, whether it's a joint thing, but there ought to be some place where they can actually have that resource. And obviously it will have to be on the net because that's where we'll be. A third is a point which I think Professor Banerjee raised, Pallav Bagle had also raised. The science journalists here do not have a body. So whether we can, say, constitute a professional body where science journalists, development journalists, TV journalists who are into this game, the formulate can be formulated, but that they should be able to have a professional body which should be able to meet occasionally.
What happened to that association in Delhi? Science Writers
Association, it's there and it's functioning, but there are difficulties. So we either
can we look at just 3 points? I'll just summarize that very briefly. Capacity building in diverse ways, resources for journalists to access, how we can do that, and body for science journalists. I would add maybe could be a body for science communication, as it were, yes, which includes scientists and journalists. So let's
one more item to that. That was research. We need a center for research in science communication. What we have at the moment within the CSIR, with one team in NISCARE, but that's just not sufficient. We need several places where there should be research going on, whether it's in the university system or whether it's in the...
Okay, good. Anyone else? So can we start from that end, Prabir, and then down?
What we are talking about the last 2 days is how a lot of the scientists are not very good communicators. And the fact is we have sat through n number of seminars and conferences to vouch that that is correct. Okay. Now, I think what we need to do is that I'm really separating the issue from scientists as communicators and journalists, science journalism. I think a course like science communication is really a halfway house. Is it for journalists? Is it for scientists? I don't know what it is for. So I think what we need to really do is somebody who comes to BSc, MSc, at least before they enter research, they should be told how to present things. And since you already have identified technology is not science and science is not technology, which I wholeheartedly agree, I think we also need to teach this to our engineering students, technology students, how to present. And actually, it's a discipline. I was reminded of what somebody teaching English told me, that you teach English differently if you're teaching English literature or if you're teaching English to somebody who needs English to get information, knowledge, and so on. It's a completely different way of the same language being taught. So I think we need to teach people how to communicate if we are going to enter the profession of science and technology as an integral part of it, and it will save us so much time. It's such a inefficient use of resource of people sitting there and not even knowing what kind of size of PowerPoint they should use and not to read their bloody PowerPoints. Okay, I'm sorry for my language. So I think this is one part of it we need to do. Second part of it, as far as the media is concerned, I'm really talking about science journalism here, not of scientists as communicators. I think there is the need for the media to interpret, communicate the scientists to the people. And I think that's the role media has to play. If it does it for politicians, if it does it for what are called the business captains today, I don't see why the poor scientists and technologists have to do it all by themselves. So I think it's an important issue. How do you support science journalism? I really have no easy solutions to that because it's really the TRP that drives the media today, and the print media similarly, how much it really is read. But I would suggest that we need to mandate in some sense that there has to be a certain amount of content that comes into general channels. If not, we have to build, like Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha TV is built for actually reporting things others will not, namely what's happening inside the parliament, unless it's a fight. So these things, I think we then have to think of how do you do it? How do you extend Vigyan Prasar into something that is science channel, for instance? Because I don't see without a actual conduit to the people from the scientific community that we can take the message of science. I would only make one last observation purely as a response to what the chairperson of the session started by saying, that the science and technologies are really different. I think the prime ministers of the country should not go to the Science Congress and say, scientists, you please solve the problems of the people. What are you doing? You should be solving the problems of the people. And I think every time they say it, well, that is their problem. Why do I have to solve it? I don't have to solve it. If somebody tells me, make a cheap pump, I as an engineer can think of it. If somebody tells me, do X, Y, Z, which is technically defined, I can do it. If somebody tells me to solve the problems of the people, that's not my discipline. So, you have to really think that why the scientists have for 60 years not said it. I suspect they would like to get importance from the establishment by claiming much more to science than what is really science. And what is not science is really technologies. And technology always has a social component to it. And the scientists would like to be above society and tell people what they do. What they're really doing are making technological choices which are not science. And I do think the wonder of science, if we don't communicate it to the general public, to the students, we are denying a certain imagination, which Arvind can do a one-man battle. But I think a much larger community needs to engage with that, and the scientific community certainly needs to do popularization of the science the way they used to do 60, 70, 80 years back.
Thank you. So looks like many hands down this line, but I'll alternate so that we are fair to both sides of the table. But and I won't stop anyone, but in view that there are many others who want to speak, please be brief. So, yeah. You and then I'll go to that side.
Okay. I have just 2 points to make. The first point is I agree that the science communication and science journalism are two different things and they have to be trained separately. But the question is, what is the future of a science communicator if there is a course and if people get in? I have been in the scientific departments. You have a chap called the Public Relations Office and a Public Relations Department. This chap only organizes functions and sends press release to the various journalists. Can you change his profile and instead of a public relations officer, you have a scientific communication officer, give him whatever designation you like. But he can also have a career and he will be the person not only to handle the press during the functions, but also performing the role of communicating science to the people.
I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Could you just, so that
I am Meenakshi Sundaram.
Okay.
Now, the second point I want to mention is there is something called corporate social responsibility we are talking about. I think scientists also have some social responsibility, particularly when you are handling cases like Kudankulam or the mining case in Odisha. The scientists also have a role. Can we think of some kind of a social responsibility as a part of the scientific institution? Like your corporate social responsibility, start thinking of a term called scientific social responsibility, fix them something, have a budget, and help them in meeting that responsibility. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah. Over there. Excuse me, just, sorry, I'll try to go in order.
I'm Sudhira. I'm with Kubi Labs. One of the things I think as a way forward, I think clearly that we look forward to is one, that all scientific establishments in the country should go for some sort of a press office or a media center. I think that's the way out. There have been debates on whether scientists can be good communicators or journalists can report good science. It's really the cusp of it, and it's really a challenge. Given that it's an emerging thing, that the way we are looking at it is an emerging thing, and we really see that it's an ongoing challenge. So as a consequence, I think the way forward is to set up a media center that will man this. So when the imagination of a somebody should anchor it. And the purpose of the media center can be liaising with the public at large, allowing scientists to directly interact with, not necessarily through the media. We are imagining that it has to be through the media. You need not necessarily have the media to go reaching out to the public. The media center can have scientists to directly communicate to the public as well.
Good. This side, no, I think it's coming down. Was there someone after? Yeah, over here.
I agree with Dr. Sinha's viewpoint that scientists need to be trained also in communication, what Prabir also said. This is what I find as a public information officer in one of the research institutes. I find it very difficult to talk to my colleagues and ask them what they are exactly doing. Okay, and I will have to translate that to the press. And it is during this that they say that, no, you don't understand, number one. So if I ask questions, they say that you don't understand, but when we ask them to communicate, they are not competent to communicate also. So this is the problem, and I have tried to bridge the gap, but the problem is the gap is always there. So we need to have a continuous mechanism where whether it is the new pool of scientists who are coming in, or whether there are the already established scientists who needs these kind of tools.
Point. Scientists being poor communicators, and that needs to change, is something within the scientific community is also deeply appreciated, even though that inability hasn't gone down.
So that has to be addressed.
Yeah.
So I
Good.
think a continuous mechanism has to be.
Yeah. Mr. Parsad?
One of the major points which was made, and well made, though at times very irreverently, is the lack of resource persons. One suggestion I have: the same problem was faced in the United States by organizations like IAAS. They have a resource book of communicators. They are not communicators. They are a resource book for communicators, where you get a list of persons who can be contacted. Now in India, this is poorly done at the moment. Now, as you are mentioning, by personal contact you develop, that's not enough. So there should be a resource book in which, for instance, atomic energy, desalination, blah, blah, whatever it is, biotechnology, a set of specialists who can contribute, who can be contacted by press, With probably you have to get appropriate clearances and all that. That will be very vital.
Just one interruption before we go to the next person is, it would be very valuable that we move from stating the problem and stating the answer. The answer is valuable, we need all these things, to actually developing a solution, which is more complex, about who do you think should do it and how, and what our roles in that will be. Otherwise, we will end up having a very valuable wish list which belongs to no one. Gaur.
Yeah. I've been listening since yesterday after my presentation and have not interrupted and not said anything. I'm worried about 2-3 issues since yesterday. One of the issue is that are we asking for a grand project where every citizen of the country will become a scientist? When we talk of BT Cotton or BT Brinjal, we want everybody to be expert with latest knowledge about biotechnology. The moment we talk of nuclear technology, we think that we will be able to make every citizen the best physicist in the world. So this wish list that you were talking about needs to be probed slightly more carefully. What we are aiming at, what is this science communication that we are talking about? The other problem is that a common human being loves maybe talking to children, then going to film or doing his work, and then also wanting to know a little bit about science which can be used in daily life. Which also means that varied classes, castes, regions would have different kind of aspirations and demand on science that we want to communicate. Which brings me to another assumption that is all pervasive here, that it's a good thing to communicate science. Why should we assume that it's a good thing to communicate all kinds of science? I think we need to, I'll go by what Anuj Sinha ji has proposed, that we have to research on communication of science, which is where we are lacking. Somebody feels very good about communicating science, like me or Arvind, or we form a group and then start communicating science. But what kind of science? To whom? And what are the aspirations of people? Where do they stand? What do they want from science? Etc. Therefore, we should very carefully chalk out a plan to do the kind of research that this nation needs for communicating science to varied kind of public. I don't think that if nation needed and wanted to produce a large number of communicators of science, it wouldn't have done it. We do not have good communicators today among scientists and outside the scientific community because probably it's not needed. Who knows the answer? At least I don't know. But we don't ask such uneasy questions. One of the reasons at times is that we just want to run small projects, get some money in the name of science communication, etc. We are not serious. Have we turned back and saw what NCSTC has done in the last 30, 40 years? No. There's no assessment. Absolutely no assessment. A lot of money has been pumped. We don't know what has happened to that money. Who got benefited from it? Therefore, I think the roadmap that we are developing has to have a very strong component of what do we mean by science communication, what kind of science communication will be effective in the light of previous experiments that have been conducted. We have conducted large-scale experiments, like Jan Vigyan Jatha was a very, very large experiment, and it has no parallel in the world. It has had an impact, but we don't know what kind of impact it had. The last point that I wanted to make is that science communication, if you look back at the history of 400 years, has never been done in ideological vacuum. And I do not mean by narrow ideological positions of political parties. Science communication, even today, cannot happen in ideological vacuum. When scientific temper, the idea was proposed, it had strong undercurrents of ideology. And today, that notion has to be visited, revisited, redefined, whatever you want to do. But without that ideological medium, science communication won't mean anything. Scientific facts, figures, and information keeps on changing on almost now daily basis. What do you communicate? People turn back and say, you scientists were saying this yesterday, and today you have almost changed your opinion in the reverse direction. So just communicating information, laws of science is not sufficient for building an egalitarian, democratic society. I think roadmap should be conscious of these issues.
Stress, we should really try move from stating the contours of the problem, the difficulties there, what we need to do, to actually try and use these very valuable inputs to define at the end what exactly is the shape of the animal we want to create to execute this. Otherwise, we would have, had a nice debate and we'll go home.
Sir, Pallav Saab gave me this title, Challenges Faced by Science Journalists and Communicators Working in Vernacular Languages and Insight to Science Communication Courses. So basically, I am a trained science communicator, and I did 5 to 6 years science journalism and TV production in various channels. And after that, I joined Vigyan Prasar in 2004. मैं हिंदी में कुछ बातें ज़रूर यहाँ पे सर बोलना चाहूँगा, क्योंकि हम यहाँ वर्नाकुलर लैंग्वेजेस और हिंदी में मैंने कुछ यहाँ पे रिव्यू किया है. सर एक चीज़ हम यहाँ पे जो मैं कल से भी बातें होती आई वो बहुत ज़्यादा सामने शायद नहीं आ पाई. हमें अपना वर्नाकुलर लैंग्वेज में जब तक हम साइंस को नहीं पहुंचाएंगे सर, बिकॉज इन मेट्रोस दिल्ली, बेंगलोर, कलकत्ता में हम अंग्रेजी बोलते हैं, लेकिन हम जरा सा भी आउटस्कर्ट्स में जाएं, आप कोलकाता से 20 किलोमीटर या 10 किलोमीटर बाहर जाएंगे तो आपको वहाँ पे बांग्ला या वहाँ का रीजनल लैंग्वेज ये मिलेगा. ये कंडीशन पूरा इंडिया में है. हमारे पास 22 ऑफिशियल लैंग्वेज हैं और 400 से ऊपर वी हैव लिविंग डायलेक्ट्स और लिविंग लैंग्वेजेस. तो जब तक हम अपना वर्नाकुलर, और कैसे होगा सर, हमारे पास मोर देन 50 एक्टिव वॉलंटरी ग्रुप्स हैं जो साइंस कम्युनिकेशन में काम कर रहे हैं, राइट फ्रॉम केरला शास्त्र साहित्य परिषद एंड वन ऑफ द ओल्डेस्ट वन इन विज्ञान परिषद प्रयाग इलाहाबाद. हम उनको एक्टिवली सपोर्ट कर सकते हैं. और जो मेरे फ्रेंड ने कहा साइंस मीडिया रिसोर्स सेंटर, ये भी मैं स्पेशली कहना चाहूंगा, देयर इज अ नीड ऑफ ए नोडल एजेंसी लाइक साइंस मीडिया रिसोर्स सेंटर और इंडियन साइंस न्यूज एजेंसी. बिकॉज जब मैं जर्नलिस्ट था, मैंने लखनऊ और दिल्ली में साइंस जर्नलिज्म, पत्रकारिता या टीवी प्रोडक्शन किया है. मुझे बहुत कम मौका मिला जो मैं साइंस को टच कर रहा हूँ, वो सब बातें करते हो चुकी हैं यहाँ पे जो जैन साहब ने और चीजों में लोगों ने की. आई डिड माई साइंस कम्युनिकेशन कोर्स फ्रॉम लखनऊ यूनिवर्सिटी, MSc इन साइंस कम्युनिकेशन, एंड साइंस जर्नलिज्म इज अ पार्ट ऑफ दैट कोर्स सर. And it is a broad umbrella of science communication in which we are studying a lot of science policy, history, geography of science, and science, a lot of things. And after that course, आप यकीन माने देश में अब तक more than 1,500 trained science communicators हैं, and hardly 3 or 4 are working in government sector, including me, one of my friend Amritesh in NPCIL Mumbai, and 1 or 2 are in Pune and some other labs. And out of 1,500, all are engaged with corporate sector, public relation, and some PR agency, Dainik Jagaran, Times of India, Aaj Tak और Z News. तो सर अभी आप देखें इस जनरेशन के बाद, I am 36-37, मेरे बाद हम अपना जनरेशन कहाँ से लाएंगे? हमारे पास अब जो साइंस कम्युनिकेशन कोर्सेज चल रहा है, जो बात कही गई, उसको एम्प्लॉयमेंट नहीं है. तो सर मेरा स्ट्रांगली कहना है कि वन इज नेशनल साइंस मीडिया सेंटर और साइंस न्यूज एजेंसी नंबर 1, एक ऐसा विंडो जो जर्नलिस्ट को वर्नाकुलर लैंग्वेज, हिंदी, इंग्लिश में कंटेंट प्रोवाइड करे, साइंटिस्ट का कॉन्टेक्स्ट प्रोवाइड करे. और इन दैट पर्पज विज्ञान प्रसार ऑलरेडी recently completed a database of science communicators in India in the supervision of Anu Sinha sir. Last 2 years हमने वो प्रोजेक्ट किया है, and more than 450 साइंटिस्ट का डाटाबेस हमारे पास है, जो उसमें एनवायरमेंट, बायोटेक्नोलॉजी, बहुत सारे थीम्स पे हमने काम किया है सर. तो एक तो ये. दूसरा सर एक मेरा स्ट्रांगली रिकमेंडेशन है कि हमारा साइंस लैब में, जो सर ने कहा, साइंस कम्युनिकेशन यूनिट हो, जिसमें हम ट्रेन्ड साइंटिस्ट या हमारा जो यूनिवर्सिटी से ये निकल रहा है लड़का जो पढ़ के ट्रेंड साइंस कम्युनिकेटर, उसको हम जॉब दें। अभी तक हमारा जो वैकेंसीज निकलता है सर, साइंटिस्ट BCD, जिसमें हम साइंस MSc केमिस्ट्री फिजिक्स मैथ्स मांगते हैं, व्हाई नॉट MSc इन साइंस कम्युनिकेशन?
So to summarize, 3 points you're making. One is, for those who didn't follow the Hindi, that
and vernacular language.
that we must have science communication in vernacular languages. Second, a media center which caters to all languages effectively. And the third point was really about career development.
Yes sir, हमारा एक तो लैब में सर हमें साइंस कम्युनिकेशन यूनिट चाहिए और इनके लिए जॉब चाहिए सर। नहीं तो सर ये जनरेशन के बाद कुछ बचेगा नहीं सर। मैं बता सकता हूँ, 1500 मेरे पास डाटा है सर, सिर्फ 3 या 4 एम्प्लॉय गवर्नमेंट में, बाकी सब नॉन साइंस काम कर रहा है सर।
A program for making scientists better communicators. My problem though is again the following. You are stating the problem, then you're stating what I call the answer to the problem as opposed to the solution. The answer is that the problem should disappear. The solution is more complex. Yeah. So what exactly do we do is something which we need to evolve. Okay. Pallav, and then, you know, there's too many hands there, but let me say, then Dr. Ranganathan, and then we go back.
Thanks a lot, Vijay, for coming in. It's wonderful to have you here. I'll first make a point which Dr. Balasubramaniam left in my mind before he had to go. He had, his wife is not well and he had to suddenly leave for Hyderabad. Otherwise, he would have stayed on. He asked me to pass on a message which others have also made on the table, which is to have workshops, both within institutions and for journalists to bridge the gap. And he suggested that NIAS could take a role in that. So there is a problem, a solution, and a roadmap for that. I was very surprised that till date, even though we have spoken about scientific temper and public understanding of science, we really don't have an all India snapshot of what is the public understanding of science in India. If that is the problem, now we need a solution, and the solution has to come from some kind of an all India survey. Gauhar has tremendous experience in this, but Gauhar's hands would probably be limited. I would suggest if we look at an option of taking and asking the National Sample Survey Organization, NSSO, which is one of the most regarded outfits in India for statistical services, to conduct at least initially a snapshot and then if possible continuously a survey on the public understanding of science. The last point I want to make is from my end, which is my own suggestion and humble suggestion, is what Anuj raised and Prabir raised. I think there is a need for a little bit of an incubator, a place which offers a neutral ground where scientists, communicators, journalists all can come and talk to each other and not talk at each other, and in a friendly environment. The kind of discussion we've had in the last 2 days, it's been outstanding. I've been a practitioner in this business, but what I've learned in 2 days is really there. And last point, I am putting my might behind this. If there's anybody who needs support on any of this, I am there. I'm a working journalist. I continue to be a working journalist, but I'm devoting time to this.
Venkataraman, we have Professor C.N.R. Rao himself. So that drive must increase. That is not the part of this workshop, but I personally feel much more can be done. If I go to a bookshop in Cambridge, I see hundreds of books. I don't even have to go to Cambridge. If you look at Amazon, I can find hundreds of books on all the topics. But not enough books are written by Indian authors. And the question of writing in a vernacular language is even more difficult. I'll just give the example of the International Year of Crystallography, spearheaded by Professor Gautam Desiraju. He has been able to translate perhaps 3 or 4 languages of the main document of just 4 pages. I feel it should not have taken us much time to translate them into all the Indian languages. shows the difficulty, the challenge that each one of them faces. I do feel it can be done, it ought to be done, but I feel that is not the purpose of this particular seminar in my view, but important, but not the purpose. Second one is science journalism per se. Now newspapers, magazines are all aware of the importance of science, so they communicate. This can be done mainly by people who are journalists, but who are willing to dialogue with the scientists, get to know. I feel we have wonderful people here who have done that. And scientists in turn can go to them saying, look, this topic is important, why don't you give it some more publicity, etc. I have had a discussion with Jayan and so on, this can be done. But the third thing for which I thought I came for this is this question of bridging the gap. There are serious issues which are affecting the communication between the public and the scientists. There is actually distrust. I mean, looking through the conference proceedings, seminar proceedings, it looks to me on each one of the issues which was touched upon by Jairam Ramesh, there is a lack of, there's a disconnect if you like. Whether you take climate change, nuclear energy or mining, all of these issues. I feel something needs to be done. To some extent I feel NIAS can address that. On each one of them we could have a workshop where you discuss nuclear energy. What are the pros and cons? How to address, how to reach it to various people. NIAS has been charged with, by DST long ago to communicate to scientists, for example, nanotechnology and many other branches of science and technology. We have done it very successfully. In fact, that has been one of my more satisfying experiences at NIAS. I feel in the same way, the question of science communication to bridge the gap, not the whole totality of science and technology, but take specific topics. And it's clear there are 4 or 5 topics which require urgent attention. On that it can be done. We can have the science and technology, for example, nuclear energy coming, others who are from the other bodies here lecturing at that, and at the end of it we can come with perhaps concrete suggestion. This would be my suggestion. Then maybe the question of setting up a body or an organization, other things can arise. But this groundwork has to be done before we reach that. So to me, I see the role of NIAS, having come this far, having organized courses to popularize science in a way, to among scientists, even training of directors of labs and so on. NIAS has the capacity to do that. I feel we can move to this particular topic, but take each topic as it were. If you take the whole of science communication, bridging the gap is too vast a field, but each one can be done. Thank you.
Just 2 points. What is it? We need to make the science communication courses more skill-based and some sort of finishing schools. Not just for journalists, even otherwise. And second thing, SCRB, I mean, like many of these science engineering boards, Science Engineering Research Board, they have some money spent or kept aside for public understanding of science, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, the latest thing, right? So can we have the researchers working on these projects to have maybe a kind of press release or digital content as part of the program, which can be put on their websites?
I just wanted to add a point to Pallab's suggestion about an all India survey of public understanding of science, and in my presentation I was highlighting we also need to know where are people accessing their science information from, and that will help us also understand some of the future trends on sources of science information, and then we can tweak our communication strategies also keeping the future in mind. The second is there has been a very generalized kind of suggestion that we need an information resource, but we need to just think a little more what kind of information resource, and we have an extremely good working model of Eureka Alert from AAAS. If we could have an Indian version of it, which gives you research abstracts of upcoming publications, not old publications, but upcoming publications with an embargo, who to contact. And it also has, Eureka Alert also gives you information about new projects that have got funding. So we get a flavor of what kind of scientific projects are we working on, and business grants and technology transfers. Little bits of info they have, 2 lines. But that would be enormously useful for us. This is the specifics of what kind of an information resource. And we need press officers, sir, especially in universities. We do not have any information on the kind of research, however little and whatever it is, but university research is a kind of black box usually for us. We just don't know what kind of research is happening there. I'm sure very good research is happening. And workshops, of course, are needed.
One is regarding having the science communicators, having training and building resource for that. So, when we say science communication, there are two parts. One is the communication itself and the communicating science to the people. Now, my suggestion is that in developing that kind of human resource for scientists, we have to take up the training work as far as there are two parts. One is the skill development, another is the basic knowledge about the principles of science, communicating, how to communicate science and in what way. So, the skill part should be taken up at the school level. If we can introduce in the curriculum at 11th and 12th stage, that is the best time to develop the skills among the in the human resource. And whereas the remaining part, just knowing the principles and how to apply them, I think the grown-up scientists, whether they are at the PhD level doing research in the universities or in the government organizations, they are mature enough, they can learn if the need be there. So for them, there can be an availability of suitable forum where the training can be provided, whether it is NIAS or any other different institutes which can give them, impart them the basic knowledge of what are the nuances of communicating. That will solve the problem to some extent. So that is one thing about it. Another point is about the government rules. Bulk of the research even today is being done either in the government organization, when you talk of R&D as such, and to some extent in the universities which are again part of government. We are still governed by the archaic government rules, CCS conduct rules, which were framed by the Britishers when there was no R&D in the country. The rules were framed basically so that the administrative information, who is doing what, who is being transferred where, how many is the deployment of police forces and all that, these kind of administrative matters, so that there is complete, the person has to keep his mouth shut. Today I think they have become totally archaic. At least for the government, the scientific departments, there should be a separate set of rules when it comes to communicating the professional work is concerned. There is certain provision that yes, the scientists are allowed to go to the professional bodies, seminars and all, and present their work. They are not covered under the conduct rules, provided the permission is taken from the head of the department. But communicating to media or public in general, still only Secretary to Government of India is authorized and nobody else. So there has to be some distinction between what is being communicated, because ultimately it's scientist who is doing the work. He is the best person to communicate the things rightly to public or to media.
I thought of telling you that what we will be able to do. Yes. Because as a funding agency, I think the Welcome to Youth India Alliance, as a grant advisor, I think very two simple things I can do into science communication is basically I got a lot of resources from you know, where you get to get information about science communication. I can share those information with our fellows and encourage them to get involved in public engagement activities.
But also, I think the point
more than happy to come and participate as resource persons, or can even tell some excellent scientists in India with whom we work with. And the third thing, which I don't know whether from funding agency I can tell here, if the institutions in the country, if the scientists, if they have one of the part of the appraisal as public engagement activity, what kind of activities have been taken for the last 1 year, other than publishing papers, if that is made as a mandatory thing, I mean, some kind of initiative will also definitely come from scientists.
Archita, then down this road, then afterwards.
Two suggestions. One is web media gives a huge scope of communication, but it is not much used in India, so the tools are not much known even to the science communicators. So in the science communication courses, a module may be included on web media communication. I mean, Western countries there are courses, but at least we can have a module on web media communication. It goes much beyond Twitter and Facebook, much beyond that. A lot is to be learned. Second is a little more of openness and keenness on part of government officials to share information, a little less of gag. Maybe the rules can be simplified or made not so complex about how government scientists need to communicate with the public. We are talking about press officials, but even press officials to access information from the government scientists, for them it is very difficult because the approvals come so late. Yeah.
The problem is not that the rules are a barrier to communication. Mm-hmm. It's internal dysfunction which uses rules as a pretext for lack of communication. So we should be careful about it.
So any method to correct that internal dysfunction, because information is now real time. Twitter's, Facebook, it's real time. We can't wait for 6 days to convey some information.
That also is a consequence of internal dysfunction that no one is punished.
Yes.
I think there is a slight misinterpretation of the FRSR rules. See, the FRSR rules, in a way, forbid scientists from communicating or talking to the press about the policies of the government. Okay, I don't understand why a scientist in a botanical research institute wants to comment on Kudunkulam. I get all these kinds of requests. I dismiss them outright. They need to talk about their science first. Nobody stops them from talking about their science. A paper which is published, they are very, very, very easy to talk about. Gupta ji has a problem. He talks of national security. In his case and Shri Kumar Banerjee's nuclear weapons issues, FRSR should apply fully. That's perfectly all right. But there is a gross misrepresentation of the FRSR rules. It's about the policy of the government you can't comment on.
Over that as academics, most academic institutions are, even if they're completely funded by the government, are technically not within, you're not government servants. There's nothing to stop academics from commenting on anything under the sun.
But sir, then there's a problem in the perception. Yeah, either there is a problem in the perception or there's some unwillingness somewhere. Because... Okay.
Just a comment, because...
Thank you. I'll be making 2-3 points. Quite often, I have been a science communicator for a very long time, so more than 3.5 decades. So quite often, children as well as the common people, they are very inquisitive, they are curious, okay, to know about many things about science and what the new things are going on. So now it so happens that now our ISRO and BARC and other government departments, they do not have any portal of their own for communicating what sort of work they are doing. Okay, so if you have a look at this NASA portal, so they have so much of information for the general public and also even for children. There is a specific corner for children. So why can't this be taken up as a policy matter? Every government department, including BARC or ISRO, okay, they must have a public understanding or this thing, communication portal, okay, where they give, all the important these things, the projects, like Chandrayaan, for example, or some Mars mission.
Interject again. Prabir's problem is that we first need to have an understanding and then have a public understanding on our portals.
True.
But anyway.
But this is a part of the game. Because information is something that has to be available. Next, now I wish to say that quite often what happens is that major projects, is it possible, could we make a suggestion that as a policy, for example, the big program on nanotechnology or Chandrayaan or something, is it possible to set aside 2% of the total budget for public communication? It happens in some countries, it is there. So it's 2% of the total budget, okay, of your project. Okay, that should be, I will say, set aside for public communication. I think this would be a good idea. And I want to make just one more, I will say, comment that besides, I mean, say, this simply, I mean, say, communicating information to the people, I mean, say, most of our efforts also should reflect the scientific method. Through, I mean, say, maybe, I mean, say, through the scientific programs we make, radio programs we make, or whatever we write, the scientific method has to be reflected. And finally, projects like, say, Vigyan Rail, I think so most of you must have seen, that was in 2003, 2004. So, and then say, that made a real big impact in the country. So this kind of, I mean, say, this means have to be used for this purpose. When Bharat Janagari Gadget was mentioned by Gawhar Raza, is one thing. And then when I was in DST, me and Professor Ramamurthy, we tried to, I mean, start one science channel for the country. Okay, somehow it did not go through. I will not go into it why. But then say now this is something which is required of. Only things we have is things like say Discovery Channel or something which do not have Indian content. So this is something, I mean, say, which has to be taken, this science channel, I mean, say, this has to be taken up. And the project like Vigyan Prasar. Okay, I'm through.
Events for journalists where we can discuss issues and challenges the kind mentioned by Jayan and Padma in their talks. And within that organization, we could have a structure where we put one young journalist under the mentorship of 2 or 3 veteran journalists to solve the kind of problems that were mentioned today and yesterday. And we can also have that organization host international events like the World Conference of Science Journalists, which Pallav mentioned yesterday. We cannot host because we don't have an active Indian Science Writers Association. And the association has to be run by actively working journalists, not all kinds of science communicators, because every field is very specific. In India, we use science communication term in a very ill-defined way, and science journalism is a niche in itself. So have something specifically for science journalism.
Thank you. Yeah, because in the country, I mean, more than 80% of the research is done using public money. I think in each of the research grants, there should be a communication plan that should be asked by, and then it should be also looked at the appraisal. The second thing is all government scientific institution websites should be actually made updated, and then because you see that it's not done at all, and also key research findings should be highlighted continuously.
Yeah. I want to relate 2 anecdotes, both having very clear messages. One is that I am fortunate to have exposure to both. I wrote for local press, particularly in Marathi, right from my school days, and I did this for 15 years. I came to research much later in my life, but then last 20 years I have been in research. Now, since I have exposure to both the ends, well, I enjoyed listening to everyone, but I was always comfortable in this communication. Okay, I was also fortunate that many stories were made on my papers. So Pallav made a couple of stories, and one of them made it to Science, the other did not. Jayan made a number of stories, and I also had coverage from New Scientist, Economist, and so on. And during this interaction, I found myself extremely comfortable. And I think they asked a lot of questions. Some of the questions were really hard to answer. But I felt comfortable because I had an exposure to the other end also. So I knew what they expect. I knew what makes a story and what doesn't make a story. And I think exposure is what really matters. And if the 2 ends understand each other, there will be much smooth communication. The other side is, the other story stems from this, that because of this, right from when I joined IISER, I had been saying that we should have a center here, which we have now. Okay, we have a media center in IISER Pune, and students are involved. Okay, so here they are encouraged to write stories, write script, make video films, edit them, and so on. Okay, and students are fascinated. And some of the students, so IISER essentially caters for a research career, but some of the students through this media center are so much motivated that some of them have more or less determined that, okay, we want to do science journalism. This is something that fascinates me. I feel that rather than having separate courses on science journalism, students doing science should be exposed to this. Okay, thank you.
Sir, speaking about the curriculum and introducing modules to the science communication courses, frankly speaking, we are finding it very difficult to get students itself to take up this degree program. See, we run two parallel programs. One is electronic media MSc and another is science and technology program. What happens so much so that the applicants for science and technology communication program is very less. And those who are not getting electronic media students are filled in this course. So that we understand that the course itself is like students are not willing to take yet. This is one major program. The first batch of MSc Science and Technology program was very successful just because all the students received a scholarship, regular scholarship. But later what happened, because of lack of funding, we lost the scholarship. And initially it dipped the admission also. So the scholarship is very less actually. But what should happen really is a scholarship should be given which should include the students should include their accommodation part also. So it should cover almost 2 years of their program. Initially what happened is DST wanted to run this program with free of cost. It shouldn't be charged. But since it's a self-supporting mode, we are supposed to get a fees for this. But in case if students are able to take up this course without a fee and with the scholarship, the program might be more successful. And again, talking about the forums, the senior science communicators here who are very successful here should give first preference to the students who are doing this science and technology communication program. You have to help these students first in giving job opportunities in your organization. That will be a very good place where it will create a job market for these students. So with this I'm thanking you.
So, even we discussed about the conventional methodologies, very few people discussed about the non-conventional methodologies like citizen science project. So in Europe and almost all the countries, they tried it. They linked the community with the research institutions through citizen network. And it is considered to be one amongst the most effective mechanism to scientize the policies as well as to enhance the scientific temper. So we need more citizen sciences programs. Nowadays it is only restricted to ecology or some social science activities only. So other institutions also should open their doors to the children and or the general public, and they should they should work together in problems which is affecting both of them, since science and it cannot be separated from the society. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. The digital medium is of course of the new medium more glamour, but we should not forget radio and television. And with all that we do at the moment, I mean, we are able to generate about half an hour of new program on a daily basis between CSIR and the DST. That's just not sufficient. If we really have to, I mean, do that, we have to find mechanism of which we can, I mean, generate a lot more program. Then only we can talk of a science channel or being present in more than other.
Say that I was very reluctant to let you speak again, but this radio suggestion is a fantastic one, which shows that the chairman should not listen to himself or herself.
See, it's clear that there are two classes of people, the science communicators and science journalists. Now, the science communicators start with our scientists, and then they have an ability to convey what they are doing or what their colleagues are doing. Now, today there is one public relations officer in an organization like BARC, 4,500 scientists, and you expect that he will be able to communicate everything to the lay public is unrealistic to expect, but that's what happens. When we were young, Parsardi and myself, we used to say PRO knows only one job very well. He knows how to open the Coca-Cola bottle without spilling it out. That was his training in science communication, if you want to call it. Today is much better. But my feeling is that, okay, everyone is not the same. But there are some fellows who can talk about anything in their neighborhood. So in BRC, If say 10% of the people know what BRC is doing, the day-to-day details nobody is interested in knowing broadly, then they should be an adequate basis for communication. And if there are 400 people who can tell what's happening in different rooms in BRC, if one fellow says, I don't know, other fellow will give the answer. If one fellow says, my rule does not allow me to do it, another fellow will say, go to hell with the rule, I will still tell you. So what is required is some sort of a training for the professional scientists on science communication, which tells two things: how to communicate, what to communicate, and what not to communicate. The second aspect is, we run a course for IAS officers, joint secretaries, and we run a course on 1 week, for example, in urban development. What are we going to teach the IAS officers who are already in the job? Basic idea is the following: when they are here, when they are here, HERE, they hear, HEAR, people who are experts in specific areas in urban development. More importantly, they have an ability to share experiences among themselves, because they spend 24 hours in this campus. And they find it quite valuable, and the feedback is such that fourth year, we have already completed the program for IAS officers. Nothing stops us from saying, okay, in every organization, 10% of the people should be trained in science communication. This will make a big difference. It is a low-cost option, because every scientist has an opportunity to attend some course or another, and not all of them are directly related to the work, and one of them could be on science communication. As far as the science journalist is concerned, if you have 400 science communicators in BARC, many of the complaints of science journalists will disappear. I am not in favor of offering science communication courses in colleges and the universities. Due apologies to the institutions which are doing. For the simple reason, nobody knows where are the job opportunities, and without a job opportunity, nobody will join unless they will say, okay, I get also accommodation charges reimbursed. That's not a good reason to take up a career. So I am not in favor of giving this and then letting it to a job market. You pick them up after they have been in a job market for a few years, and then they have a flair for doing this. I would like to stop there. I told you, even in the IAS officers, we don't teach them urban management because we don't know it. We either bring experts who have succeeded in doing this and their experiences are useful, or allow these people share their experiences. Effectively, there is no teacher. Every one of them teaches the other fellow.
Sorry, go ahead, personally.
Dr. Ramamurthy brought in one point about BRC. I just joined about a month back as a consultant at DAE, primarily on this issue. Some freedom is given to me. Now, what happened was, from what I understand, some 100 young people were willing to do, and some program was organized for them, but I don't know how far it has progressed. Exactly what you suggested, but not randomly. People who are willing, to be taken, etc. Now, doing science and talking about science, there is a difference, So that creates a problem. Those who are willing to do as a part of their work, it may be okay. But taking them out of it and starting them, it will not. So this, this conflict of interest is going on, but I am sure something will come out of it. We are moving in the same direction.
I want to tip the whole scale of the discussion that are happening here. So we are seeing when science meets the public, bridging the gap. Science on one side, meeting public. I just remove science and put when films meet the public, I don't see the gap. When politics meets the public, I don't see the gap. When stock market meets the public, I don't see the gap. So to me, it is the issue of the public. What does the public want? I think we are not addressing that issue. On the other side, if I talk to a film journalist, he is very clear what the public wants. He communicates it, he delivers it. Ask a political journalist, he knows what the public wants from political systems, he delivers it. Ask a stock market journalist, he will tell exactly what the public wants and he delivers it. I think we scientists don't know what the public wants. And we are looking all around and we are not able to decide what we want to do. And I think we need to understand what the public is. And in this forum also, sir, we don't hear the voice of the public.
Okay, I think no student has spoken before here, and I would just like to put forward my views. I just completed my second year in IISER Pune, and I love writing. I would like to do science journalism. So the only point I would like to put forward is we should have opportunities like internships, and you should like my college, IISER Pune, we are not aware of opportunities you should give us an like in summers you should give us like opportunities for experiencing what this field might actually offer us. So that's all I wanted to say as a student.
Can I add?
Yes.
Yeah. So since you mentioned about IISER, I want to add one incident. Actually, I was trying to bring this concept that we have student projects at various levels, that even making a story or making a good video documentary could be a student project, but then that was vetoed out. Okay, so people in IISER think that only research is project, nothing else can be project.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thanks for the opportunity. I am representing the Karnataka State Council for Science and Technology. And here, when we started this rainwater harvesting program, it was done in a very big way. Actually, we wanted to go to the public to accept this rainwater harvesting as a technology for finding solution for their water problems. So what we did was we went to the parks early in the morning when a lot of people had come for walking and things like that. And then we took some of those politicians also there, and then we kind of gave them all the kinds of information that is required to be followed, and then we also told them that they could come to the council for further assistance and things like that. And that really helped in propagating that information. So what if the public wants something, then if we are able to capture that and give it to them, they would accept it and they would ask for more. There are two types of science here. One is the one which impacts public at large. So for that, there is a crying need for information. And we need to understand what it is, and then we have to kind of feed it to them at regular intervals. It could be on energy, it could be on water, and it could be on infrastructure, what the government is doing, what the scientists are doing, what are the new things that are coming up, and things like that. And the other one is like Higgs boson. Somebody somewhere has found something extremely useful and which does not have any impact on the society. As a news, it can go, but the public is really not willing to kind of, they just look at it, but then they don't really relate to that kind of information. So that is another thing. Another problem here is, one is that we have to engage ourselves more and more with the children to kind of appreciate science. It's not that they understand, but then they should appreciate science. Now today, unfortunately in schools, they don't find time at all. But we need to use all these media, different kinds of media, and see that they appreciate science. Film is also one very important media. Film and TV are one very important media. Perhaps we should also produce more and more scientific fictions, and then perhaps that would also give the children the kind of interest in science. So these are some of my views. Thank you very much, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have a very small point. There was a lot of talk about how the science is not being, the critical issues pertaining to science are not being communicated in vernacular languages. We have primary schools in almost every village in the country. So what I'm saying is, when we are developing a policy, why not also look at making science, as the gentleman over here said, making science more attractive, and even include some emerging areas like nanotechnology, biotechnology in the syllabus, and try to, dispel the, say ill effects of nuclear technology or things like that. So a major revision in our science syllabus is required. at least at the school level, because we are talking about nuclear technology, more power plants can be built. So we have to build a generation which is much more literate about emerging and critical science issues. This is my humble submission. Thank you.
Science communication is not a linear process happening in a dichotomous system. Scientists are not aliens, or they are integral part of the society, the heterogeneous system. And within this system is a very small population. And their task is starting from developing finding their own solutions, their own questions, finding money, doing research, publishing. Later, now we are trying to overload them with the responsibility of communicating to the society. In fact, within this heterogeneous system, there are at least 3 or 4 other major constituencies which are involved in communicating the science. The most important constituency, or the largest constituency, is the teachers. And we need a mechanism to involve them and update them to the happenings in science. Next important, but I don't have any more hope on that, is the press. Press, I would say, our old press, which we always claiming as the fourth estate or the fourth pillar of the democracy, is dead, and now we have only the corporate media or media corporates. I don't know how effectively they can contribute for communicating science. And the third constituency may be the most dangerous in a way. They are something like the jokers in the card game. They can take any important role, any important avatar in any time. They can be the nuclear scientist at a time, they can be the biotechnologist at a time, they can be the ecologist, but meantime, they always reflect only one side of the science. They are the activists and the advocacy groups. Unfortunately, these people are having louder voice in the society, and whatever they speak is heard as, projected as science today, and it is communicated the policy. Go to any international meetings, it is not the scientists who are heard, it is the advocacy groups are heard. It is there, represented there. Why the scientists are not represented in the international meetings? Why our policy makers are not listening to is giving more importance to the advocacy groups than the scientists? And is it possible to educate them in the real science? Or can we have any mechanism to involve them to the mainstream science? So these are the 3 important constituencies, and meantime, we scientists always fail, or at least most of the time, fail to engage with the policy makers. That's all. Thank you.
I just want to share the experience of 2 programs that we have done recently. One of the programs is being done in collaboration by NISCARE, in collaboration with Rajya Sabha channel, which showcases the life and work of scientists. As Prabir said, that why shouldn't scientists be showcased? We showcase day in and day out politicians and all kinds of people. Why shouldn't be? So that program is running very well. It's going on. Though I face the problem of seeking time from the scientists. They are bit busy people. They don't want to appear before the camera.
These are live scientists.
These are scientists who have achieved.
Oh, I thought they were dead scientists, long dead scientists.
No. Every week we have this program. It's called Eureka. So about 20 scientists have already been interviewed, and it has caught imagination of a lot of people. But the same experiment we repeated with Vigyan Prasar about women scientists. Now the problem is that we have run out of money. Where do I get money from? There's no money for science communication.
Just one clarification. When Dr. Amudi talked about science communication, Actually, the science communication, that course is totally different. The universities have. They're actually for, training even journalists, They have been becoming journalists because otherwise there are no science journalists otherwise. I mean, very difficult to get science journalists.
These courses are designed, developed, and catalyzed by DST only. DST committee and a group of experts and known science communicators started and designed these courses, sir.
We should head towards summarizing our discussions, and it's been, at least for me, incredibly valuable. Despite my exhortation that we shouldn't confine ourselves to stating the problems, I did learn a lot from the statement of the problems, so that's been valuable. And despite my exhortation that we shouldn't give simplistic answers, but look at complex solutions, I think some of the actual answers have been very valuable. So I'll try to list them out. One point to start with is what Gauhar said about understanding who we are talking to and what is the grand plan of science communication. Because just as there are many different levels of science and technology and so on, there's also a huge range of complexity in our society, which we should be clear about what we are and where we're communicating. So that's a challenge, but I'll come to that specifically what we can do about that. The second point is about what Prabir raised. I think that's a fundamental issue about scientists communicating what they're doing. And the point someone made about people understand what politicians are saying or stock markets or film and so on and so forth. The science as an enterprise is minuscule compared to that. And that reflects, whether you want to call it corporate situations or whatever, the economic might of those as much as the value appreciated by society in terms of communication. But scientists communicating well is a serious issue which science agencies, and I'm talking about specifically what one can do, science agencies can push institutions and push scientists to try and be involved in doing that, and we clearly are not doing enough. And one of the lessons I'll take back from this is to structure that as a key aspect. Linking that to another point which came up later about the web portals of science institutes. We are trying to insist on that being better. We are trying to do that by revamping our own websites. We still haven't seen that yet, but it's almost ready to happen. But more other government websites, other science department websites also need to be done. That's important. But institutional websites can happen much more easily, and that needs to be pushed. But scientists as communicators can be pushed from funding agencies. The related aspect, which again can be pushed from funding agencies, if proposals come from groupings such as NIAS, NICSTAD, or other private organizations, not-for-profit organizations, is media training. So there are media people in doing all sorts of things, stock market and so on and so forth, who might want to attend courses for media people in science communication, where there's interface where scientists are also there. So that, while they went into media for a variety of reasons, if they're interested in this or want to understand current issues, those trainings again can be pushed from a funding agency's perspective. Another aspect which can be pushed from the DST level and DBT level is to move ahead Rajya Sabha or Lok Sabha TV or whatever in a manner where there is an assured substantial commitment to the public understanding of science as a key component, as someone suggested, as a fraction of the grants we hand out. And that should be a defined fraction, both to investigators to actually use for communication, but also be given to such structures for enhancing communication. And what you mentioned is about, I know that there are awards for science writing, and these awards were framed about 60 or 50 years ago. And their prestige at one time was high, but they have actually declined. But scientists, again, need to be pushed to write about their science on a much larger scale. And science politics, and science and society, all of that, India, the level of interactions with society is really very poor. I'd like to, in that context, highlight both in terms of primary teaching, citizen science, and all those aspects which you highlighted, two examples and something very different and dramatic happening in India which can be amplified. If you look at the programs run by the Harvard Hughes Medical Institute and the Wellcome Trust in the UK, they're extraordinary, both in terms of in terms of undergraduate programs and school programs in teaching and communicating science. They've really been fantastic. The Wellcome Trust and the Public Understanding of Science and Exhibitions of Science, we're actually working with them to get one to India, but those are the kinds of programs which have been really enormous. But we have underestimated the impact and need to support hugely public studies, such as what has happened in Kerala, what Arvind Gupta has done tremendously. Those kinds of efforts, such as Arvind's, for example, amplifying that to a wider range of science, structuring that so that it is no longer an individual effort or a small set of people, but catalyze those kinds of programs, addresses the issues which Ranganathan said about popularizing science in many ways. So the catalyzing of exemplary contexts, which we see a few, whether in Kerala or in Pune at Ayuka, what Arvind has been spearheading and putting on his website, that can be so readily amplified into a context. And there again, I would say that's the push comes from organizations like the DST working with MHRD to assure the amplification of that, those kinds of supports. The other point which is about Anuj's, I'm glad I had him speak again. Podcasts and radio are becoming extraordinarily valuable and are going to be extraordinarily valuable in Indian languages and in terms of reach. People can get them from their websites at any time. If you look at US and UK stations, if you look at science magazines across, their podcasts are extraordinarily valuable, and these allow, in terms of schools, downloadable access or distribution later on in a very interesting manner, and also not just in terms of popularizing science, but importantly engaging in debates and getting feedback. So FM stations are again a very valuable tool, and there I'm not sure what role funding agencies can do except to support it, but these are the kinds of examples where a bottom-up thrust to ask for funding and for mechanisms to funding agencies would be very valuable, and we will see that. I would like to end by saying that a kind of an incubator, which Pallav mentioned, a adda where scientists, science journalists and societies can meet, at least to start off in one place, maybe at NIAS, maybe in some other place elsewhere, but amplifying this concept into having multiple addas where in every major context where there's a critical mass of such people meet and talk to each other and exchange formal and informal ideas would be very valuable. That was the purpose, for example, ostensibly, I don't know whether I'm right or not, the India International Center was set up in Delhi many, many years ago. And it is a kind of an adda, but it's become, society has grown hugely and the people there have aged hugely, so it's usually typically people above 100 who are allowed in. But that kind of a concept being amplified would be very, very valuable. So these, I think, are my views. Most of the things I've noticed are items where there's a responsibility on the DST or DBT, and I'll be very happy to sort of action items over there very rapidly. But I've made my notes, but just to make sure that I don't miss anything, I'd be very grateful if any of you, and tell others also through social media. I noticed that this meeting is already being tweeted live. I can see that on my phone. Yeah. So there are secret people, telling the whole world about what's happening over here. So we're already communicating well. But do give your feedback as soon as possible. But no problem if you do that later. So any other points, or you're serving us tea or coffee or something? No.
I think there is a tea.
Yes. So Pallav's other point about a survey of the level of science, I think that's another point. I've noted that down. Is it a for-profit or not-for-profit aspect? If it's not for-profit, a similar mechanism in India would be very, very valuable. And then collating information in those contexts would be very, very good.
It's a free service and it's supported by
AAA funds it, yeah.
PINSA, somebody could just trigger it off, and academies are considered.
Yeah.
Academy is sitting here.
I'm not academy man. I just you
You
told me.
give money to the
I'll
academy.
give money. Yeah. Yeah, I think I think a proposal which is structured funding, that shouldn't be a problem. So it's important to do that. No, but my last point here is this: while I'm prepared to take on, draft proposals and pass them on to relevant people within DST or DBT so that the funding mechanisms can be done, it's really important to see that there are two kinds of things which come out of this. One is a diverse grassroots mechanism where each of you who wants to do whatever you want to, write your proposals, push agencies, try to set it up, and so on and so forth. The other is there are 2 or 3 biggish items, and someone needs to take ownership, or a small set of people need to take ownership. A Eureka kind of model, how are we going to put that together? A science journalism society here, that some of the science journalists need to take ownership and develop that and get funding from institutional agencies. The big incubator which Pallav suggested, how do we do it in a modular manner which can go to other locations? These things, I think, again, we can do this by consultation, by email, but someone or some sets of people for each of these need to take ownership. Otherwise, it'll be a very nice idea which will go into one of those green paper folders with a NADA on it. Good? Yeah, thank you very much. So,
on behalf of NIAS, I thank Dr. Vijayaraghavan for sparing his valuable time, and also all of you for being part of this discussion meeting. I hope we will reach somewhere.